Hi, crafty friends. Today I am sharing a process for how I created a Dainty Rose card featuring the dynamic duo by Altenew using the Dainty Roses. I am grabbing the layering stencils and some passion flower cardstock from Hero Arts, and I am going to cut that down and use that as my base. I'm also going to grab the Hero Arts Unicorn ink, and we will be using that as the initial layer when stenciling on the base layer for these flowers. I am trying to achieve a tone on tone look, and I also love the look of inking on colored cardstock. So that is why I am starting with a white base for all of my elements. Taking a sponge tool and the Mountain Mist ink, this is Crisp Dye ink, I decide to go over the leaves and the greenery using that. I switch out my sponge for a small finger dauber later, and I'm going to repeat these steps after I rotate my stencil and place the leaves and greenery in a different direction. I also take the time to heat set my pigment inks and even the inks blended on top in between layers, just to make sure that I do not have a ton of smearing of the inks as I am stenciling and moving things around. So that is a tip if you do decide to use a pigment ink as your base when doing this. Once that is complete, I grab my second stencil, which has the roses on it, and this is 3 layers for the roses. I will be using the Sugarplums Fresh Dye Ink family. I am first going to go over the larger portion or the first stencil for the flowers using my white pigment ink again and heat set that. Once that is complete, I use the pale mauve tone, which is the lightest tone in this color family. Next, I grab the Amethyst Fresh Dye ink, and that will be used with the second floral stencil on this stencil. So just adding more detail and building up on the color. And lastly, I go in with the Grape Agate, which is the second to darkest color in this color family. What you aren't seeing is that each time I remove the stencil, I kind of grab my rag and wipe off any excess ink. Since the floral elements can touch other pieces of this card base, I don't want there to be random flowers throughout the card base, only where they are supposed to be. So you may want to check the back of your stencil and just make sure you aren't transferring ink where you don't want it to be in between each step. Now I'm taking the opposite side of the roses and the Berry Cool Fresh Dye ink, and I am adding those additional details to those floral elements using the right side of the stencil. Now you can see these beautiful roses coming to life, all of the detail, and I feel like this passion flower cardstock as the base peeks through the white at just the right tint, and it is quite beautiful in my opinion. Once I am satisfied with everything, I do go in with my heat gun and just heat set these larger roses. I also have to go back in with the stencil and add the closed rose detail, and I will be doing that in the same way that I did the larger flowers. So first I am adding some white pigment ink, heat setting along the way. I then use the pale mauve, the amethyst, and the grape agate. These smaller portions of these stencils is where your smaller blending brushes and sponges and daubers come in handy, so you can get into all of these fine details and not go over the edge of the stencil. So if you have those, grab those brushes and use them, especially for these small sections. So this is how we are looking, and I really, really like it. I do go back in and make sure that certain areas are more pronounced. There is more definition where there should be. And then we will move on to stamping on some of the finer details, the lines that are on the stamp set. The stamp set does have like A, B, C, and D included on the actual packaging, or where everything is printed right there, the top sheet. There is some letters that help you align all these pieces with what every portion of the flower. So use that. I did have to move things just a bit to make sure that they were perfect. And even if they aren't perfect, you're still going to get a nice image. So I'm just laying these all out right now. And I will be stamping this with the plum ink, the darkest ink in this Sugarplums family. So remember how these roses looked before. And now once we stamp, look at this detail that these lines give to bring these florals to life. They are so beautiful. So since I didn't really rotate my stencil in a way that I could rotate these stamps, I'm just going to take them off my plate and put them where they need to be, and we are going to stamp those as well. Again, I'm using the Plum Fresh Dye ink to stamp, and this is how those finishing touches look on these roses. I must have missed a piece there, so I'm just going to stamp that. Now moving on to the final touches, which are these little background greenery pieces, like little branches or leaves. So I'm just grabbing the grape agate and moving my stencil around and placing these little sprigs, stenciling those in where I think they should be. I do actually add them where I don't think they're supposed to be. I just want to fill in some space. So I just move that around my card base and try to fill in any empty spaces. I again heat set everything and decide there needs to be a little something else. So I am going to place one of the closed roses off to this left side, bottom left of this card panel, and I'm just going to layer it up using whatever inks I have left over on my brushes and heat set while or as I go, excuse me. Once that is complete, here is what my card is looking like. To finish it up, I just go in with the stamp set and the plum color using a scratch piece of this passion flower. I stamp the sentiment, "Hello Precious, love you so much," again from this stamp set. My final detail to the sentiment is adding a little white ink along the edges, just running that across my ink pad, and I add it on, and there we have a complete card.